It's hugely popular among the very people who want it and need it most.
Majorities of blacks and Hispanics want school choice.
As long as the public school system is a monopoly, they will act as other monopolies act towards their customers, with contempt.
These kids, or rather their parents, chose a different kind of school, a charter school. That's a public school, but one outside the normal government bureaucracy. Kids at these Success Academy charters do remarkably well.
We are #1 in student achievement in the state of New York. We're outperforming all of the wealthy suburbs.
Success Academy teaches mostly poor kids, but 95% pass the state math test, 84% the English test. Government-run schools have a much lower pass rate.
The school-to-prison pipeline has already started. In fact, I've talked to some educators, black educators, they tell me it actually starts in the 4th grade.
In those inner city schools, they're crime-ridden. Students are afraid to go to school because of the, quote, restorative justice rooted in Marxism, and it is making it almost impossible for students to be suspended. And in cities that are run by Democrats, they have not gotten rid of that. And so there's lawlessness within the schoolhouse. The teachers are afraid to teach. There's chaos in school, just like it is on the streets.
In 13 of the 39 Baltimore schools, not a single student tested proficient in math. Baltimore ranks 4th in terms of spending on students. Part of the tragedy of this is that these kids are incompetent in math and incompetent in English, but they receive their high school graduation diplomas. Last June, for example, just one school in Baltimore where 90% of the students scored the lowest possible score one can get on the math exam, they held graduation exercises. And the families were proud of their sons and daughters, and some of them even won scholarships to colleges. Now, the social tragedy involved in fraudulent diplomas is that these black students, as well as their families, they think that their kid has a high school diploma just like the white kid has a high school diploma. And so if these kids can't get good jobs, they can't pass a civil service exam, they flunk out of college, well, the tendency is to attribute it to racism.
Charter school kids in the same building with traditional public school kids pass the math test nearly 7 times as often. That's an average. At the extremes, it's almost unbelievable. I mean, one classic example is a school where 7% of the kids in the traditional public school in that building passed the math test. In the charter school, 100% passed the math test.
Charter teachers can be asked to work more than the union would have allowed. They told us they don't mind.
But you're going to burn out. Why aren't you ticked off?
That's not an option for us because we kind of have our eye on the prize with these kids.
And these are not kids who are skimming the cream. They're kids chosen by lottery. They don't even test them for ability. They don't even look at their academic record. They take them into the schools and they have hard work and they make it clear at the outset, and they don't tolerate a lot of nonsensical behavior. And these kids are doing incredibly.
In the charter school, they have to please the parents in order to have the parents send their kids there, because no kids are required by compulsory attendance laws to go to a charter school. So they're an all volunteer institution. And if you have poor education, you have bedlam in the schools, dangerous students who are allowed to run amok, those parents are not going to send their kids to a charter school. So the incentives are entirely different. Also, the kind of people you attract. The charter schools do, in fact, keep track of how each teacher, how the students of each teacher turn out when they test them. And if you have a teacher whose kids keep flunking the test, that teacher is not likely to survive very long in a charter school. That teacher can survive for half a century in the traditional public school.
The system is not working, and it is not working because it lacks a vital ingredient. The experts mean well, but a centralized system cannot possibly have that degree of personal concern for each individual child that we have as parents.
Parents are asking to be given the vouchers so that they can decide where to send their children.
There was a school just 2 blocks up the street in which only 2 children in the entire 8th grade could do math on grade level. In that school that we were running, 96% of the children could read on grade level, and 84% could do math on grade level. There is no more powerful declaration of our own humanity as black people, even for light-skinned ones with curly hair, than to stand on our own 2 feet and say we are not going to send our children to schools that we know will not educate them. You cannot call it a school if children don't learn. The reason why 1,194 children applied to just one of my schools in 1 year without printing a single brochure, without going to a single church to talk about it, is because they just want my son to go to a school where I know at the end of the day he's going to come home one day better prepared.
In Philadelphia, among public school teachers, those who have school-age kids, 44% of them have them in private school. Now, that is contrasted to only 10% of the American families, average family, that have their kids in private school. Only 6% of black families do. And in Chicago, around 39% of public school teachers with school-age kids have their kids in private school. In LA, I think it's around 28%, something like that. Now, what does that tell you? The people who know the school system the best don't put their own kids in it.
Now, that's the equivalent of opening up a restaurant, holding up a sign saying, open for business, but don't eat the food.
This whole debate we have about school choice is not really about whether school choice works. It's about whether public education should be primarily a jobs program for adults. Mm-hmm. Obama becomes president of the United States and spends 8 years trying to shut down a school voucher program in his own backyard in Washington, D.C. that was started by his predecessor, George W. Bush. Why? Why the first black president could enhance this program that he knows, poll after poll shows, is popular in the black community? The reason is that Barack Obama is no longer simply another black person. He's now a black president. He has special interests that are nipping at his heels. He wants to be reelected. He has to indulge these special interests, one of whom are teachers' unions who oppose school choice because many of these schools aren't unionized and don't use union labor. So Obama has a choice. Am I going to side with my political benefactors, or am I going to side with this black constituency that helped put me in office? He made his choice. He sided with the teachers' unions.
Thank you for taking my question, President Obama. I wanted to know whether or not you think that Malia and Sasha would get the same high-quality, rigorous education in a D.C. public school.
If I wanted to find a great public school for Malia and Sasha to be in, we could probably maneuver to do it.
The president now sends Sasha and Malia to Sidwell Friends. It's the same school the vice president's grandkids attend. Tuition, $32,000 a year.
Your Jesse Jacksons, your Al Sharptons, your NAACPs, who tend to oppose school choice because they are siding with the unions, right, who do not like it, not because it doesn't work, but because many of these charter schools and many of these schools where the vouchers would be used aren't organized.
Well, they understand that if 50,000 kids on waiting lists to get into charter schools are able to do so, and the per pupil allotment of money is $20,000, more than $20,000 per student, that means that the traditional public schools will lose more than $1 billion a year. And the public schools are in no mood to lose that kind of money. And the teachers' unions are by no means in a mood to lose that many teachers' jobs and the union dues that those teachers pay. It's bigger than that even. There is a whole way of life that has come about in the traditional public schools. There's no way that they can compete with the charter schools without changing that profoundly. For example, the ironclad job protection that the teachers have, so that teachers who have done all kinds of terrible things remain on the payroll because it is just too expensive to get rid of them. My gosh, they have one class of teachers who did no teaching at all and would just report to some vacant room and sit there during the day, and they would collect full pay and collect seniority and their various benefits and so forth, because the cost of firing them is prohibitive.
This is the list of steps required to fire a teacher in my town. This is why most principals don't even try. They look at the list of appeals like this one and just give up. Or they push the worst teachers to transfer to another school. That's such a common way to avoid these rules. There's even a name for it, the dance of the lemons. It would be funny, except these rules leave some kids stuck with terrible teachers. This former police investigator says it takes years to fire even an abusive teacher.
Lots of people said he hit kids. The kids said it.
Lots of people said he hit it, and other teachers said it that were present in the classroom. It took me 4 years, $283,000, $127,000 in legal fees, plus what it costs to have a substitute fill in him, all while he's sitting home having popcorn.
Still being paid by the state.
Still being paid by this district.
He couldn't even fire the teacher who faked his doctorate. And
he went to sleep in class.
And he was quite disturbed when the supervisor came in and woke him up.
He complained.
It never ends. It never ends.
Hiring teachers after 2 years in the classroom, giving them a job for life, making them impossible to fire. There's no educational justification for that. Those are job protections.
In California alone, the unions raise over $300 million every year. What do the unions do with all that money? They lobby the government for more money.
There's all kind of chicanery to prevent the charter schools from expanding. That's why you have tens of thousands on the waiting list. Right. It's not that the charter schools aren't willing to expand, but every conceivable obstacle is put in their way. Democrats around the country are lining up to stop charter schools from expanding, try to cut back on them. And many of them are the very schools that are most successful, are the ones they're zeroing in. Places like Success Academy or KIPP schools and so forth.
They want their constituents, their constituents to believe that the Democratic Party and the government has to do everything. It's the only way they can stay in power. They don't want charter school. They don't want choice. They don't want people of color to think for themselves, to work and make their own career choice. They want the government to hand out things. They want their constituents to believe that the government is everything for them.
The Democrats, I understand they have to do that because they're beholden to the teachers' unions. Why the Republicans don't say anything about it, that is what baffles me.
Now, there's only one solution to this problem. That is, we need more school choice. We need to break the education monopoly and give parents more choice. That is, there are a number of parents who want their kids to get a good education and they're willing to sacrifice, and the kids themselves, they want a good education. But however, if they're in a rotten school, they will not get a good education. So the solution for many black children, and as white children as well, is for us to have school choice. That is, to give vouchers or tuition tax credits or even charter schools. We must do something about the education rot that's happening in our country.
There are bad charters.
But bad charters close. Bad public schools don't close.
That's a big difference. When charters don't deliver for kids, they go out of business. The government monopoly never goes out of business.
Market competition is the surest way to improve the quality and promote innovation in education as in every other field.